Hello there and welcome back to Laurence Plays Factorio Planetary Pioneers. And since we've now basically finished, in inverted commas, Igrys, I thought it'd be nice to have a quick look around the rest of the solar system and take a look at all of the things that we've been doing here and there, little piecemeal jobs during the various streams. So, on the subject of Igrys, let's get started here. Now, one of the most exciting things we've done on this planet is we've started making the diagonal inserters like this guy over here. And so because of that, we've built this to sort of kind of showcase them, where we've got rings upon rings of various different inserter types passing stuff around. I've got some blue ones on the inside here, and then there's a blue and orange going with straight and diagonal going around the outside, and then some red ones. It's all a little bit silly, but it's a demonstration of how the diagonal inserters work. So they work exactly as you'd expect. If I could put one of these here, for example, and it would be able to insert from the belt here straight into this machine, if that was ever actually a useful thing to do. Or if I turn it round, it would take gears out of this machine. That's a poor example because there's no parts in there. But you get the idea. They will give us a few extra possibilities with our assembly machines, allowing us to insert things in ways that you wouldn't normally be able to. If you'll pardon the expression. And those are an Igrian speciality, so they're being made over here because these require the conductive bricks and the cermite and a normal inserter as well, and that will allow you to then make the diagonal inserters. And I think we're going to start exporting them in at least some sort of quantity. So I think over here we have a yes, we have a rocket here that has them being brought over by bot. We can load them in there, and then in the future, when we start needing them on future planets, we can start bringing them over and well, making even more ridiculous spaghetti with them. So that's going to be lovely. And while we're over here, let's take a look at the other bits of rocket siloage that Tristan's been managing and upgrading and setting up to make sure we have all of our exports leaving this planet. We've got two for launching science packs up so they can go decently quickly, although at the moment we're only producing the science fast enough to fill up one box, to fill up one rocket. As you can see, there's only 84 in here, and this one is actually full. It's got the full ton of science packs in there, so depending on how many we're trying to put in here, maybe we'll then, yes, we've got another rocket's worth will eventually end up in here, and then we can start thinking about filling up another rocket down here, but that's going to take a little while. Then we've got this one, which is taking barrels of magic fluid over to Nauvis, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. And then we're also taking off the science enhancer machines, and again we're slowly making those. And so this is why I was talking about in the last video about how we're deciding we're not going to start using these things until we've gone off and done another planet. The idea being that it gives Igrys a chance to get everything we're going to need stockpiled and built up, so we don't just demand everything all at once and it's going, oh no, I can't keep up. So we're not going to be using these for a little while, but we will eventually start using them in large numbers to make the science production better. Similarly, we're taking away the enriched tesseracts. Not huge quantities of these. They don't get used for very much. I think we reckon it's just spidertrons off this planet. And if I take a look in the Factoriopedia, we can see, yes, it's just used for the strong barrels, which are made on this planet for transporting the magic fluid. The science enhancers, which are made on this planet and then shipped off to other places because they require conductor bricks and rich magic tesseracts, so there's no point in trying to make them somewhere else. And then also spidertrons. And those require raw fish, so we're unlikely to try and bring raw fish here because they tend to spoil and go off and go a bit stinky. So it'd be a lot easier to transport the rich magic tesseracts, which don't go off, over to where the raw fish are coming from. So we'll probably be making them on Nauvis, I expect, because as far as I'm aware, you don't get fish anywhere else. But you know, this is a modded playthrough, so we may see them coming from other places. So we'll probably launch one rocket of these tesseracts, or maybe two or three actually, because there's only 10 per rocket. These things are really heavy, so we'll be able to ship those out to other planets and then make the spidertrons there and send them to wherever they're needed. And then, as previously mentioned, the diagonal inserts at the bottom. So I mentioned that we're going to be transporting the magic fluid around. So yes, as we've discussed before, you need magic fluid in order to use the science enhancer machines, and these are valuable enough that it's going to be worth shipping that stuff around. But you can only find it on Igrys. We're digging it up from a sort of a fluid mine over here, and there's another patch of it over here. There's quite a lot of it available on this planet, but it's not available anywhere else, so we need to ship it. And to ship it, you can't just chuck it in a normal steel barrel like you would with any other fluid. No, this has to be put into a strong barrel, which requires cermite and rich magic tesseracts in order to make them. And so we've got that supply of cermite coming through. You've seen how we've expanded the production of it over here a little bit to try and make, well, a bit more of it, because at the moment it's a little limited. Although that said, we're not using it in particularly huge quantities, so maybe it's okay. And that can be brought in here. We can then pump the barrels full, and then we can put them on this belt over here. And the magic fluid goes lots and lots of different colours depending on the factors and graphical options, I suppose. It's all shipped down here, and then that gets sent off to Nauvis, where it's dropped in here on the landing pad and then passed down to here where it is unbarreled and then passed off to go into a station somewhere around on the other side here. So we are gradually, very, very gradually filling up this station. As you can see, we've got it up to an amazing total of 17,000 so far, which is not even enough to fill up a single wagon, let alone an entire train. And this is another one of those things where, again, we're letting it sort of gradually build up before we start putting in machines that are going to demand it. So that's being brought in, as I said, by the in the strong barrels that are being chucked into here. They're being emptied and then passed out along this system into the landing pad's general sorting, maintenance, whatever we want to call this area, this system. The idea being, when we get an entire train's worth in the boxes over here, they will be called by the mall system over here and brought in. Good grief, there's some sort of massive. So there's something going. Oh, Sophia's moving things around and destroying things. Okay, that's why the box is an absolute bot frenzy. Anyway, those barrels will be brought into here by train and dumped out into the storage system. We'll store them over here, and then as soon as possible, we'll then ship them up by rocket back over to the Dynamic Storyteller's incredible conveyance, which will ship them back over to Igrys, where they will be dropped down into the landing pad where we've got a largish request going on here. They will then be passed out, be shipped around here, and then refilled. So you can see some barrels have gone round the loop already, and we've got a supply of them building up along here. So those can then be refilled and go round and round. So rather than needing to make a steady stream of strong barrels and then trying to decide what to do with them at the other end, we're going to be shipping them round and round and round, recycling them, reusing them, and this is much better because then we don't have to make quite as many of them. So that's going to give us a nice healthy supply of magic fluid over on Nauvis, which can then be piped into any science enhancer machines we want to use over there. Speaking of science enhancer machines, while we're on this planet, Tristan has switched the red science over to using the science enhancer machines because they're much faster than assembly machines, and they've got that lovely 150% productivity bonus, so they make 2.5 times as many outputs for every input. And so because of those two factors, we've been able to massively cut down the number of machines we had. You can sort of tell down here in the red science area that we originally had, well, machines going all the way down here, and we put in pipe work because we thought we might need more of the science enhancer machines in order to produce the science at the rate we thought we'd need to. But no, we only need 2 of the machines. In fact, we only seem to need 1 of these machines. That seems to be ticking over quite nicely all by itself. Okay, maybe call it 1.5 machines. And so, but if we did ever need to speed this up, there's room to put more machines in down here. Up here with the purple science, there's been a similar thing. We've dropped down to only 2 machines. Mike, of course, is a little bit obsessed with overbuilding, so he had 2 rows of assembly machines going along up here, with the expectation that we'd then swap them all out for the science enhancers. But Sophia decided that actually he didn't like the way Mike had set it up and has rebuilt the things in a slightly different way, moved some of the belts around and stuff, and just changed things a little bit. Mike had a little bit of a rage, but it's now basically, it's working. It's just a bit different from the original design that Mike had come up with. And as you can see, 2 of these machines is producing easily enough purple science to keep everything happy. And he's got them passing out onto both sides of the belt, so yeah, it just flows along here, and then we eventually merge those the red and the purple belts together. We've got loads of science coming down here, and that's plenty to start then making the other types of science packs down here. I noticed this machine at the bottom isn't running. Oh, there's an inserter has been rotated. Let's put it back. I can't imagine there's any reason not to have it the other way around, but there might have been, and unfortunately this isn't going to actually be saved into our main save, so it doesn't really matter. So this gets us that steady trickle of the mineral science packs coming out. If I check, we can see we're making them at almost 2 per second, which, that's quite a lot. I think that's going to be enough to keep things happy, especially as we're generally alternating back and forth between researchers that use Igrian science and ones that don't. And I imagine in the future we'll run out of Igrian ones unless we just keep going on with the infinite glass productivities. And at that point, this planet can kind of slow down a bit, at least until we start getting other researchers where we want to use them. And I don't think it's going to be too difficult to build up enough of a buffer of all of the science packs from here that this planet can mostly go to sleep in a while. In passing, I should also mention that Tristan has added the science enhancer machines as one of the things that are being brought over on this belt and then dropped into this purple chest over here. And these are all then being taken away from here and supplied to the main mall area over here, where they're dropped into these yellow chests and then passed over into these purple chests, which means they'll then go into main storage, ready to be then brought out again and made available in these red chests to the rest of the factory, which is a bit of a convoluted way of saying that the science enhancer machines are now theoretically available wherever we need them around the factory. We just don't have a great deal of them yet. We can see over here that some have been produced and brought over to here, but only some of them have so far been taken away from this chest and added into the main system down in the mall, mall, and then none of them have been requested to be passed out of the mall again. This whole thing's a bit weird and complicated. I'll talk about it in a bit more detail later on. Back on Igrys, Tristan has once again expanded the power production because we seem to always be using slightly too much of it, and now we're in a relatively happy position of, yeah, using about half of it, although that's possibly because it's always daytime at the moment, and so the accumulators have been nicely charged up, and the rest of the time, well, we're using power from both. It's going quite well. We seem to have a decent amount of headroom, so if we zoom in, if we could zoom in here a little bit, we would be able to see that effectively we are using all of the solar at this point, and then it drops down to only using half of it here. So essentially, I guess we have that much filling up that sort of area as excess, meaning that we're using about 3/4 of the power that's coming in from the solar. So we could expand a little bit further, but at the moment this seems to be doing quite well. And if we look at the accumulator charge on here, you can see the same sort of thing. It's only going down to the accumulators being about half charged, so we've got quite a lot of headroom on the accumulators as well. So the factory's in a good position over here on Igrys at the moment. He's also upgraded, or upgrading in the process, you can see lots of requests in here for upgrades, upgraded lots of the belts that are carrying the copper around to green rather than blue, because, well, we just have that much demand for copper in the factory, especially for making these conductive bricks. So having a little bit of extra throughput on here is going to make things a little bit better. It's going to mean we can chuck out a lot more bricks, and as you can see, we don't have quite as many of those as we would like because this belt is still constantly flowing. It's not too big of a deal. Things seem to be basically okay, but there's always room for improvement. We've also done a lot of research into increasing the productivity of the magic glass production. So looking at this machine now, which doesn't have any productivity modules in it, we've got a plus 40% productivity on it already. And that's without any speed penalty, because this is just through the bonuses productivity area. We can see down here, we've got the magic glass 40% productivity bonus there. And so this is now producing, I don't know, is it enough? It's hard to say. But there's quite a lot of it flowing down these belts. Things seem to be running quite happily. Maybe there's a bit of a shortage of blue circuits over here. Maybe we should be bringing those in from Nauvis instead. Things are basically working. Next up, let's take a look at Nauvis, because there's always lots of things happening over here. And I think the most interesting thing that's happened is it's going to be that Sophia has cut off the mall Roboport area from the rest of the factory's Roboport area. And you can see that if you look all the way around the edge here, you'll see there is a solid unbroken line of green going round. And that means that the orange areas have been separated from each other, and therefore bots will not fly from the outer area to take things from the inner area, or from the inner area to take things from the outer area. And the rationale behind that is to sort of split the two off, because there are a lot of bots doing things in the mall area because we have an entirely bot-based mall system, which means things are being brought in and dropped off in the purple chests up here in this station. They're then transported from there and put into storage chests all along here, and then taken from there and put into the blue chests along here, allowing these machines to request the things they need to make whatever it is they're making. And then their outputs are put into these yellow chests, which push them essentially into the storage system, and means they're available for inside the mall area. That means if you have temporary in between things like cables being made around here, they can then be taken from there and taken over to machines that require them. And that goes for anything that is a temporary thing. So all of the telescopic recipes, like assembly machines. So down here we're making assembly machine 1s. They're put out into a box. They can then be transferred to this box to be made into assembly machine 2s, which are put into this box, and can then be transferred over to this box to be made into assembly machine 3s to be put into this box to then be made available to anything that wants it. However, because we separated the Roboport networks off, that means when we request a build somewhere else in the city block system, stuff is not going to get brought out of here, so things need to be taken out. And so in order to do that, we have a load of blue chests over here which will request the things that are needed by the factory. They can then be passed over into these red chests and these red chests, so we've got a load of storage space available to allow things to be taken away. So you can see some of those assembly machine Mark IIIs have been brought over here and brought out into the main factory's Roboport area. And you can see there that we've got the orange highlight going down and covering those red chests. And if I mouse over one of these, you can see the orange highlight going down and covering the blue chests. So we're having to use inserters to pass between one and the other. We're choosing what to bring out based on a combinator over here. So this constant combinator is saying we want a stack of assembly machine 3s, we want a stack of logistics bots, we want a stack of construction bots. And as we carry on building things on this planet, we're going to be increasing the number of different things we've got in here. So maybe we'll say we want to also have chemical plants. So we can say, oh, want to have a stack of chemical plants. And I'd also like to have a stack of foundries, because they're useful as well. Those are then passed down to this selector combinator, which outputs the stack size of everything in there, and then those are multiplied together in here just in case we are asking for more than one stack of something. We then negate the totals on the outer network and add that to the request to cancel out anything that's already out here. This is then divided by 16 to ensure it's split evenly between the different blue chests. So they will each request a 16th of what's required. So if we have a look in here, then we can see that it hasn't worked for some reason. Aha, I see. This isn't working because if you divide 10 chemical plants by 16, you end up with 0. So those aren't being passed through. And also, it turns out, if we look on this, we can see that there are already 64 foundries available in the logistics system outside here. And so those are being subtracted from here, so we're not getting any of those out. So if I go in here, with the chemical plants, it was a better example. If I turn that up to 5 stacks, then we'll get some bigger numbers passed through here. We've got 3 chemical plants per chest being passed through, and so now we're requesting some chemical plants. Those will be brought over by bots, like this, put into these chests, and then passed out to here, where they're now available to be taken away and used by the rest of the factory. So it's a fairly complicated system, but it does allow us to keep the 2 roboports separate, which means we can hang on to all the logistics bots that we're using in here and not lose them to the rest of the factory. And so over here we have 10,000 logistics bots and 1,000 construction bots on the inner Mall roboport network, and then over on the external one we seem to have 2,000 logistics bots and almost 9,000 construction bots, because we tend to do all of the building on the outside. It was decided that we wanted to split those 2 off, so Sophia has been working hard on that. He's also included the module production area that I made a while back in that system, so the modules can be taken from here and brought over for any constructions required, for example for making the tier 3 assembly machines, and then they can also be passed out using this system to make them available for the rest of the factory. This system is not quite finished yet. We do still need to populate this combinator with all of the different things that we're going to need around the factory. And I think the way we're basically going to do that is by dropping in new construction requests and then watching to see what things aren't being provided. So over here we can see that on Nauvis we don't have any pipes and we don't have any tier 3 bulk inserters. Those are apparently the problematic things at the moment. So we'll have to see what we can do about those. The pipes will trivially be brought across. The bulk inserters are going to be a little bit harder because they're high quality versions that we're trying to see. So maybe pipes would be a better thing to put in over here. I can add pipes here, and I only need to necessarily put 1 in because pipes stack up to 100, I think. And so now we're seeing over here, we're requesting 6 on each of these boxes. And at some point, once again, we'll see, yep, here we go, here come the logistics bots, we'll drop those off, they're passed through, and now we should have, there we go, we've got some construction bots to come and grab those, and they're taking them off to wherever it was that needed those pipes. So it's a little bit convoluted. I'm not entirely convinced that it's better than just having everything joined together as one myself, but maybe not having one enormous logistics network is going to make the game run slightly faster. We shall see. Over here we have the oil refining city block, and Mark has added in an additional 2 offshore pumps over here because 1 pump was not able to keep up with the amount of water required. Now if we look at this, it's now at 98% full. I think the 3 pumps are doing pretty well. After that, I then came along and I upgraded the city block. So the briefing I was given was to make it run a bit faster because we had a shortage of particularly petroleum gas, I think, maybe a bit of a shortage of light oil at the time. And the best way to improve it was to come along and put in lots and lots of beacons with speed modules in. So these machines are now running at 3.2 times their normal speed. And that's because we've got speed modules making them run faster, but then we've used overclock modules, these purple guys in here. And these make the machines have a higher productivity without penalising them for speed. So they're basically productivity module and a speed module to cancel it out in one. And this would be extremely unbalanced, except they also have a massive power penalty. They give you a plus 80% energy consumption penalty, and so these refineries are now using almost 3.5 megawatts each, which is frankly kind of crazy. Other than that, this system is mostly just an expansion of what we had before. So we've got the banks of refineries here taking in crude oil and turning it into the 3 other types of oil. That's then passed down to here, and then if we have excessive amounts of the light or the heavy, we can then crack that down to light or to petroleum. I've also, though, put in a system here to make lube, because we realise that you hardly need heavy oil around the factory. If we take a look at heavy oil, it's okay, you can use it for solid fuel liquefaction. We don't care about that because we already have heavy oil on this planet. You can use it for coal liquefaction. We might care about that, but that's only a tiny amount to get the process started. You can crack it, you can make it into solid fuel, but you can make solid fuel more efficiently from light oil. You can make it into lube, that is important. You can put it in a barrel, that's not particularly useful unless you want it for something else. You can make it into super sealant, but that's done on Meraxis, so we'll probably find another source of their heavy oil over there. At least I hope we will. I hope we're not shipping it all over there. Similarly, electrolyte, we'll hopefully find another source of it on Fulgora, and I'm pretty sure we will. You can make asphalt, but that's a corundum thing, so again, probably not going to be required on Nauvis. You can make plastic from it, apparently, but that requires sulfur dioxide, and as far as I'm aware, we don't have a supply of that on Nauvis, but you never know, we might see that later, so that's a possibility. And you can make petrobacteria, but that again is a metal and stars thing, so we're going to be doing it on a different planet most likely. So as you can see, you only really need heavy oil for lube, so you might as well make the lube here and then not bother shipping the heavy oil out. That said, we didn't want to be left in a position where we needed heavy oil somewhere and weren't shipping it out, so Now I also adapted this station here to allow us to ship out either heavy oil or lube. So if I have mouse over here, you can see that each wagon has a pump that can feed in heavy oil and a pump that can feed in lubricant. And so when the train arrives, we'll send a signal from the LTN outpost here along to all the pumps, and then this will subtract what's already in the train. So we're doing a read train contents here. And that means if a train arrives that's asking for heavy oil, this pump and so on down there, the ones that are doing the heavy oil, will pump heavy oil into it until it's got the right amount. If a train arrives asking for lube, then the lube pumps will kick in and will pump into it until it's got the right amount. And this means we can load a train up with either type of fluid. The downside is that you can't load them up quite as quickly because you're using one pump per wagon. If we look down here at the light oil station, you can see it down here we have 2 pumps per wagon, which means we can load the train twice as quickly. That said, demand for lube, and especially demand for heavy oil, is sufficiently low that I don't think this slowdown is going to be a problem. Mike updated the metal melting blocks in the city block system as well. So we've got the crushed ore coming in here and some calcite coming in. Those are being fed to our foundries down here to then turning it into molten copper. Mike put in additional foundries down here because we found we were using a lot more of the molten than we sort of necessarily expected to early on, and so we needed a bit more being supplied. And he's done that with the iron one over here and the steel one over here, where again we're making additional. So we've got molten iron available here and here as well. Sadly, that turned out to be insufficient molten copper, and so I set up another one over here where we're bringing in a supply of the crushed copper and the calcite and then just melting it. Now this could be a lot bigger, however if we make it bigger we start to run into serious throughput problems with the amount of crushed copper that can be brought in. In hindsight, I should have built this in an empty block, not one that had an oil mine on the side of it, and if I had, then I could have had a second drop-off station for the crushed copper on the side that would have allowed me to run a second row of these foundries and produce twice as much molten copper. Still, that's being fed out down here and it has caught up, so at the moment it is okay, but in the future if we start getting through even more circuits then maybe we'll start to have problems. But for now this system is running fine. As you can see, we've got full tanks down here, we've got a decent amount in the stations over here and here. It seems to be okay. There has been massive expansion over here with the rocket launch capacity because we discovered when we went out to Igrys that we were needing a lot more stuff to be taken than we were expecting, and the previous rocket's launch system couldn't keep up. So Mark has doubled the number of rocket silos. He's also put in speed modules, and I think we already had the overclock modules in these, but this has drastically increased our rocket launch capacity, so that's good, and it's quite impressive when they all take off at once. Mark has also continued to expand out to the north. We've got 3 completely empty rows at the moment, which is fantastic. It means we've got plenty of space to grow into. But this was mainly done as a sort of a pollution mitigation strategy. And this has 2 effects. One is that you have more land area to just absorb the pollution and for it to gradually expand out into. And the other is that it means you can get your artillery trains a lot closer to the edge or a lot further north, and that means you can shell the biters and push them back further and do a much better job of protecting your pollution cloud. And that means we get a lot fewer attacks, and this is working really well. Mark has also added in an additional station on the bottom here, and this is bringing in the green ammunition and light oil that are then being fed out into the defensive wall that goes all the way around. I assume this area has been chosen because he doesn't intend to expand southwards for a while, because moving these stations is going to be a bit of a pain if that turns out to be necessary. That said, if we did move it down just sort of 1 or 2 blocks, it wouldn't be too difficult to run a belt and a pipe and then run it down the middle of here and go with that for a couple of block expansions, and then when we've gone a certain distance we can go, okay, this is getting silly now, and actually move the station. That'll be very much up to Mark because Nauvis is his planet. But this means we now have a steady supply of the ammunition required for both types of turret around here, and of electricity for the laser turrets, I suppose, and that means we can keep the area around the outside very nice and safe. On a loosely related topic, Mike has made yellow ammunition available on the train network system, and he's done that by taking the belt that's coming along here to feed it up for red ammunition that's being shipped out, that's being made to make the military science. He's also then got a belt coming down here, and that means we can then, using a cunning system of combinators here, he can make sure that all these chests along here contain an appropriate amount of yellow ammunition and red ammunition, with the idea being that we'll allow the yellow ammunition through here to be passed out to all of the chests if there's a shortage of it, and the red ammo through here, except the red ammo is all currently getting eaten up in order to make grey science. So that's not happening at the moment, but in theory we can pass that through and we can have the ammunition available. And the reason we want the yellow ammunition to be available is because then it can be brought over to the mall area and dropped off in here as has been previously discussed, and then that means it can be launched by rocket up to the spaceships, and that means it can give them a bit of a head start. They can unload that ammunition onto their outer belts to keep to get their turrets up and loaded very quickly. Because one of the difficult things about making a spaceship is that it takes a very long time to make enough ammunition from the sort of the little drabs of metallic asteroids that are coming in Nauvis orbit in order to fill up a belt like this and make it safe for the spaceship to leave. Once you've got it flying between planets, it's a lot easier because you get a lot more resources as you fly between them, and so you can rebuild the stocks relatively easily. But when you're first trying to get the ship ready to go, it's a bit of a palaver, and so if we can ship the yellow ammunition up, it makes things a lot easier. I think I've already mentioned that Tristan has upgraded the inserters along here to a higher quality ones, which means they can put the science packs into the boxes a bit more quickly. And so that's important, you can see along here, for when we've got them coming in on a belt like this, to make sure things don't jam up too much, it's good to have a faster inserter being able to pass the science packs in a bit more quickly. And it makes a big difference to how quickly we can unload the landing pad over here, and also the trains that are bringing the science packs in from the top as well. I think I might have mentioned this before, but it's important enough that it would be worth looking at again, and it is still on my list. I built a system down here to make artillery shells, and it is after a stream or two, all of the inputs were finally available. So we've got all the bits and pieces coming in here for making the explosives. That's the coal dust and the sulfur. We can make explosives. Water comes from wherever water comes from, probably this pond. Yes, there we go. And then that's fed up over here with the calcite, tungsten, green circuits, and that allows us to, and some molten iron coming in here as well. And between all of that, we can make artillery shells, and we've got a nice healthy supply of them available here. And that means our artillery trains can nip over here whenever they're a bit short, refill, and then head straight back out again without needing to faff around waiting for chests to fill up or anything like that. Because artillery trains take a lot of shells, and chests don't store very many. So I think it's something like 2 chests per wagon. Now we've obviously got a lot more than that available here, but I think it's good to have a bit of a stockpile of them because artillery shells, they're kind of important. I mentioned earlier how we'd had shortages of light oil and petroleum gas, and not usually at the same time. Usually one of them runs out and the other jams, or possibly vice versa. Potentially because we run out of light oil and the petroleum gas is full, so we're not able to make any more of it. So I designed this block over here to make rocket fuel, and yes, it is a bit over-spec'd and a bit mad, but I think this does actually just produce a solid blue belt of rocket fuel when it's running at full chat. The basic design here is fairly simple. We've got a load of chemical plants and we've got a load of assembly machines. They're taking in oil, they're turning it into solid fuel, and they're passing it down to be made into rocket fuel. Simple. And they're also surrounded by beacons to make everything run a little bit faster, and productivity modules to make everything run a bit more productively. The clever bit in here is that we have some circuitry up here that's monitoring the amount of light oil and the amount of petroleum gas that's showing up as available on the main circuit network. And so that tells us how much we've got over in the main stockpiles. And then we're using whichever one we've got more of to make the solid fuel, because you can make solid fuel either with light oil or petroleum gas, or actually with heavy oil as well. And so we've got it switching between those as necessary. And to make sure that we don't get a sort of a blur of the system switching back and forth between them, I put in a little bit of hysteresis. So we've got an additional number here, which is the amount of petroleum gas minus 210,000. And that's being fed in over here. So we'll start running with light oil whenever there's more light oil than there is petroleum gas. Fine. We'll then keep running with light oil until there's more than 210,000 more petroleum gas than there is light oil. So we've got that big gap in the middle where we'll carry on working, and there's no risk of it sort of flicking backwards and forwards really, really quickly. And this works in the same way that some of the other systems have that I've looked at before. So we're saying if there's more than 400,000, then send out the solid fuel from light oil and a green tick. We're passing the green tick round. If we see the green tick and then this one, then we'll carry on running with the light oil recipe until it dips below this value, and at that point we'll then switch over. So down here we're then saying if we can't see the solid fuel from light oil recipe, output the solid fuel from petroleum gas recipe. Those are being output to all the machines which are setting their recipe, and we don't need to do anything too clever with the pipes because these chemical plants have 2 inputs, and whenever they're running a recipe that only requires 1 input, you can use either input you like. That means we can have the light oil and the petroleum gas being fed to the machine, and it will run off whichever one is more convenient at the time, which is really nice because it means it can switch back and forth between them without needing to pump all of the light oil out of these pipes and replace it with petroleum gas, or possibly vice versa. I believe when the machines change over, they push any of that fluid that's left over in the system back out through the input that it came in from. So I'm making sure there's always a bit of headroom on these pipes to allow any light oil or petroleum gas to be pushed back out of these into the pipes so we don't waste it. Notably, the rocket fuel always requires light oil, so we have to use light oil for that one, and so the pipe just runs straight along here. That's nice and easy, but these ones are able to switch back and forth, so that allows us to prioritise based on what we've got too much of at the time. Mark has added in 2 more nuclear reactor city blocks because all of these overclock modules are using all of the power, so we've now got, I don't even know how many we've got. Using the magic of highlighting, we seem to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, 10 different nuclear reactor blocks set up now. That's a lot of nuclear power. That gives us a maximum power capacity of 11.2 gigawatts, of which we're currently using 2.3. So we may have overspec slightly here, or it might just be the factory's gone to sleep because we've not been doing enough recently. Also, some of the nuclear power plants may have gone offline because of this. We may actually be producing significantly more than 11.2 gigawatts. I wouldn't like to say. Finally, Sophia has upgraded and replaced the old Covarex enrichment process block to a much, much bigger one. So you can see over here, we've got a steady stream of uranium ore coming in, it's being refined, and then we're getting that trickle of dull uranium and bright uranium coming through. That's then being fed through here past all these machines that are doing the Covarex enrichment process. If there's any spare dull uranium, it'll pour off the bottom and go into the chests down here to be taken away for depleted uranium ammunition production or anything else that requires U-238. I am a little bit concerned that we're not going to see enough coming through here, because it won't get passed down to here unless we've got enough of the 235. Now the 235 does seem to be being produced in sufficiently large quantities, because I'm seeing some jamming up going on down here. But I also don't see any 238 coming out being fed into the bottom. So maybe we should be bypassing it with some of it. Maybe we shouldn't. I guess we'll see when we have a problem and which type of uranium we end up needing more of, and then worry about it from there and go in and fix problems when they occur rather than worrying about it in advance. Finally, Mark has also been removing redundant city blocks, so ones that are doing things that we are now doing in better ways. So, for example, there are probably some there are various crushing blocks where we will have wanted to upgrade to the large crushers. So this is one that could be upgraded because this is just using using the old small electric crushers. Upgrading to the big crushers will get us a big productivity boost in there, as we've done over here with coal crushing and iron crushing. I believe Tristan built all these up, and we've talked about them before, but as I say, Mark has been going around and removing some of the old ones that are no longer needed. And I think that feels like a good length of video. There's been lots we've been going around and improving. There are still some other things for me to talk about, but those can come along in another video, because those upgrades will still be out there next time we look. And so if you want to come along and see us fixing these things and then going off to new planets live, you can come along to our streams every Monday evening at 7:30 PM UK time. That's both on Twitch and YouTube. If you'd like to play the game yourself, then you can download the Planetary Pioneers mod pack from the Factorio mod portal. If you then want to mess around with the quality of life mods, feel free to remove the Planetary Pioneers mod. It'll leave all of the other planets installed, and then just mess around with it to your heart's content. If you want to start on the same universe as us, use the seed 11111, and yeah, let us know how you get on the Discord. I'll be back as well on Wednesday, where I should be playing some more Foundry, making more giant stompy robots, and no doubt going out and looking for more resources. And there'll be videos coming out about these games, and maybe some other stuff besides, on Thursdays and Fridays every week, so make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.